Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Jan Desper Peters, and I am your host for BTST Services podcast, Meeting You Where You Are. Meeting You Where You Are is a movement. And when we do this podcast, we bring factual information and people with real life experiences to share with you. Even though the information may not be where you are at this moment, we believe that the information we share will improve your emotional, physical, and spiritual wellness. So, today we're excited because I have a co host, and her name is Lorice White Wolf. I have known Lorice for, we're not going to say, for a long time, and she is a highly skilled, a professional, a consultant, a grant administrator, and she has become more and more adept around the topic of COVID 19. Um, Lorice can share with you some of her experience, even as being a contact tracer during the height of the pandemic. But more recently, she's been working with BTST Cares as it relates to vaccine hesitancy, misinformation about COVID, and as we've been working on this project, we find more and more that we need to focus on what young adults are doing, have done, and feel about COVID 19. So, as moms, we took a little mom privilege and we leaned on our young adults and asked them to come and join us today to share with us some of their thoughts about COVID 19, the vaccine, and how COVID has impacted them, not only as young adults, but as young adults who are in college and university. And so, without further ado, I would like to welcome again Maurice Wolf, who's going to co host with me, and our sons, Owen Wilson and Hunter Wolf. Hi,
Hey guys,
guys.
Hey guys.
how's it going?
Yeah,
Good, good.
okay.
So,
Well,
you go ahead, Reese.
no, I just want to say thank you guys for joining in. You heard Jan's wonderful introduction. You all were close to breaking news about COVID-19. Owen, you were just in college, I think experiencing your freshman year, and
Yeah, that's right.
Hunter was abruptly pulled from his junior year when everything came to a screeching halt. So I'm going to defer to the older cousin, Owen, first to give us some insight on as to how it felt when all of a sudden you're in college, everything is going well, and then they pump the brakes.
Um, yeah, I believe that's like the best we can describe it. It felt like the brakes were pumped. This was my first time, one being very far away from home. For those who don't know, I moved from Maryland to North Carolina, and finally, like getting to experience just being out on my own. So, as a freshman in college, and you get to experience a lot of things. You're basically running your whole new schedule, and for fall semester, it was just like the college dream, quote unquote. I have fun, do what I had to do in school, and continue like that. When the spring semester hit, so did COVID hit. At first, most of us didn't take it seriously. We just didn't even think that it was going to be something that big. Didn't think it was going to grow into anything that we really had to worry about. And then I want to say halfway through the spring semester, we all got an email. We have to leave camp. Everyone, freshman, sophomore, senior, didn't matter, had to evacuate campus and go home. Everything shut down. Classes were online, and it was really just I would say, a stressful time for a lot of students during that time. Um, the transition to that sort of like online living that everyone's basically adjusted to now was not
Mm-hmm.
smooth. Teachers who are older most of the time, they didn't really understand this new technology that they had to learn how to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
Students who were ready to give their attention in in-person classes, ready to be attentive there, may not be able to pay attention during the screen. So for a lot of us, it was a huge change, not only as people, but also how we learn, how we socialize, how we act. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you
That's a
so
great,
much.
that's
I
a great
mean,
um,
he hit
summary.
all the points, didn't he?
He did. He did. I just remember, I just want to
Mhm.
interject before we
Yes.
bring Hunter in
Mhm.
that I remember calling Owen and saying, "Did they say you had to come home?" And he kept saying, "Not yet, not yet." And I was like, if they don't say, and I forget what date I gave, if they don't say
Mhm.
by this date, I'm just coming down there to get you. And before that day, he said, they're kicking us out. You can come, you know.
Yes.
And so we didn't really know, like Owen said, what that meant for him to finish, his semester and being home and doing everything virtually. So I'm hoping that Hunter will shed a little light as well on his experience being in high school and what that felt like.
So for me, I think it was probably a couple days after we got out of spring break. So it was kind of like they said, "Oh, you'll be out for like maybe a week or two,"
Mhm.
and we thought nothing of it. It was more of like, "Oh yeah, like we got an extra break, like let's go." And like slowly but surely, it extended to like months, and then the rest of the semester we started out at first. I know most schools they probably start out with online classes during that time, but we actually got packets of work. Like we didn't have any more online kind of instruction with it, which is kind of actually hard for other students, and especially like a key subject you might struggle in. Like I know people in math, they were like, I can't get that personal help from another teacher like how I usually do, or like there's no real notes that they can kind of piggyback off of. And then it was more of like you had to almost be like a community member with your school. So I feel like that kind of like brought us together a little bit. So then we were able to kind of learn off each other, maybe different strategies each other didn't have and stuff like that. For me, it kind of abruptly stopped my last season of basketball, like AAU season. That's kind of where it left me at. I was trying out for certain teams and stuff like that. Like it seemed pretty good, and then boom, COVID hit, and then it was like, we don't know if we can go certain states and this and that, and the rules were just iffy at first. But then once lockdown hit, it was like a solid, like okay, like you just can't go out. Um, Heading into my senior year, it was kind of rough because there were no really senior like I guess usually how the seniors would get there kind of like this is your year, like you do you, like we didn't get that. No, it was more of like you missed out on homecoming. I mean, luckily though we did have prom. I know a lot of people didn't, but thank God our school kind of just like cracked down on that and they gave us like a strict base to follow, and I was able to go to a couple proms. Like it was pretty fun. I had a great time. And I feel like we did miss out on a decent amount of maturing just because like this is your senior year, like you're able to kind of express yourself even more, like maybe some ways people didn't before. And I feel like that was kind of like a key missing part, especially because then after that I go into college my first year, probably not having talked to a lot of people in person. So that transition was a little iffy, but I got used to it real quick, got right back into the motion. um And then I think just to piggyback off of what my cousin said, school at first was kind of hard, especially for the older teachers. It was hard for people to get, in back of the swing of everything, and it really unlocked a lot of people's like creative side, which I really noticed, especially in some teachers, like especially with the Zoom classes, like they were able to split us up in different groups. We were able to chat with other students. So I feel like COVID was kind of like a tough hit to a lot of people, but like educationally, it kind of brought the system back up a little more, especially creative wise. So like even now, like we might not have snow days anymore. I mean, some people
Those are
might not know
gone.
what that is later on in the future, but I mean, look, you still get what your money's worth. You're going to school and you're still getting your education online. So I think that was pretty good.
I was wondering, guys, before before we transition to our next group, you know, did you ever feel um, isolated when during the shutdown? I know that both of you have talked about, and I know you all, of course, personally, and I know that you like to be connected to your friends. Like, how did that feel to not be able to be connected in person? And I also realized that through gaming, you all before COVID had mastered being connected with other people virtually. But I'm just wondering, how was it different though when you were in lockdown for COVID?
Mm.
Yeah, so for me, I was able to socialize pretty well for a couple different reasons. So my sophomore year, that was sort of peak COVID, all my classes were online, but they allowed us to come back on campus. So all of my friends were on campus. So everyone mandatory testing I think it was every week, every 2 weeks. And I was able to still socialize. I was still able to still hang out with my friends that were at A&T, and with my friends back home. I was already, like you said, I was already on the game when I was on the game. So I was able to stay in contact with a lot of people. The only sort of socialization that I lost was sort of from I would say from a class aspect. But a lot of my friends that I've been going through all my freshman classes and my current classes and my future classes, we we were still friends. We didn't have that same like camaraderie. Oh, let's study for this test. Oh, let's knock this out. Oh, let's do this. It kind of broke down sort of like the structure we had to kind of take on the classes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's yeah.
yeah. What about you, Hunter? I mean, I know that you're masterful with your gaming, but I know that you had to feel a certain kind of way when you weren't able to be in personal contact with your friends.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I had kind of already a background of just like being able to talk to my friends online, so like that was kind of like an easy adjustment. And then I was able to kind of like do my own thing on the offside of just no longer doing classwork like in the day. Like some days there would be I guess I would miss more of like the classroom aspect of it, because once you're in the class, you're able to speak to people, maybe people you don't even know. Because I knew there were a lot of different transfers during that time, like peak COVID. There were a lot of transfers, and I feel like it was not really a way for you to connect to them, especially like the people that didn't know anybody coming in. So it was like in
Mm-hmm.
their shoes, like how did they feel? Like they're on online, camera on, not knowing a bunch of people on the screen, and it's like you're not actually able to kind of get that icebreaker in. Like sometimes you would have those like funny comments in class that you would miss, probably like just like maybe walking through the hallway, like seeing a friend. I mean, those are the kind of out of school thing, or out of Zoom things you would probably miss, especially like after school. Like there would always be something going on, especially because like me and Owen, we went to the same high school, so like same environment. Kind of like I know he would say like, especially lunch and everything, there would always be something going on, something fun. Um, and I think that it really just kind of came down to just you didn't get that kind of like in classroom feel. It was more of like a, okay, let me wake up, go from 7:45 to 2:30, and I'm done for the day. Not like a, you know what I'm saying? Like a kind of a child's way of just coming in and just saying, all right, I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna make new friends. Maybe like there's really none of that. But I
None of
mean,
that.
once it kind of got down and like down through the months, it was like, okay, like I can talk to some people like on the phone and this and that, like try and catch up. But I feel like it was definitely missing that kind of key interaction right after, classes and stuff like that.
Okay. All right, guys, we again want to thank you. And that as your moms, we really didn't have to strong arm these guys. We asked them and they said yes. So we're excited about that. And so, gentlemen, would you just tell the lovely people who are listening your names again what schools you attend, your classification, and maybe even your major, because Larissa and I are beaming with joy at our two young kings.
I guess I can go first. Hello, everyone. My name is Owen Wilson. I am now a senior civil engineering student from the illustrious North Carolina A&T State University.
Hello again. I'm Hunter Wolf. I am electrical engineering major in York College, Pennsylvania, and I'll be a sophomore this coming fall.
And we approve these messages. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. We'll let you get back to whatever it is that you were doing. And
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. You gave a lot of insight and really validated a lot of the data that we had already seen, but it's great to hear about it, not on a chart, but from your own experience. So thank you so much. Jan, that was awesome.
that was great. That was great. I guess we haven't seen our sons in that way. So it was just really, really exciting to hear them, speak about their experience with COVID in the school setting, and how, disruptive it was, but how they also adjusted. And they didn't say, but might we add, they still, did well with their studies.
Yeah, I think, and also they were able to give a good summary, but to actually be in their shoes and walk through it, and we observed that. We know that it was tough. We know that still some of those important milestones were missed. They had to make different shifts. It was interesting to hear Owen say, you went to school, you were in a routine, you settled in, you were very independent, and then for a while, that abruptly stopped. He had to come back home to another environment and adjust to being away from the school campus. And also, it was interesting to note, they both said some of the teachers weren't as tech savvy.
Yeah.
And they had to ramp up. And so you're talking about also for some technical classes, especially for Owen, he was just really getting into the swing of that. I remember Hunter had to do honors robotics at home. And so we went by and picked up the kit from the school. And so some teachers were able to make that adjustment. And then some others had challenges. So we're glad they persevered.
Yeah. Owen even took physics on virtually for the lab part as well. Wow. And I was thinking, how is he going to do that?
Yes.
But some way, somehow he was able to do it. The system created a way for them to do it.
Yes.
So I'm really grateful.
It was good. Yeah. All right.
So we have some more young adults who have agreed to be in our segment today. And one of those is one that I love as well. He has worked with me at BTST since I've been there. And he is highly industrious. He's always getting a degree or a certification in something. And he is just so resourceful. If you want to know how to do something efficiently, ask Montez Garnett. And so coming to the stage now is Mr. Garnett.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. How you doing? Thank you so much for the introduction, Miss Jan.
Hey, Montez. That's how I always say. Hey, Montez. Yes. So, Montez, like I said, he is very industrious. He is one of the best problem solvers that I know. And recently he got his CDL.
Okay.
Just out of the blue, he wanted to get his commercial driver's license. Great at managing projects, and like just a great all-around person. Montez, would you tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll go right into the questions.
Sure. So currently right now I am freelancing. I have a background in project management. I go to school for information systems. And I am actually in a dual degree program where I should be receiving my MBA. Hopefully by December. So
Okay.
I have a need, well, I have an interest in business. I like to see things analytically, how things work, how they come together. And I like to see how different experiences, how we can use that as a strength base to get to a common goal of whatever it is that we need to get done.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Thank you.
Montez, I'm going to congratulate you on your pivot, um, getting a CDL and working on your MBA. What sparked you to just say, I'm going to pursue something different during this time?
Sure. So, my commercial driver's license is something I always wanted to do. I had a friend, well, a colleague, and he said, "Hey, we should get our commercial driver's license. I'll get us some trucks." Needless to say, that fell through, and I continued and I carried on. But I'll say this: that was a rough 6 months. My program was about 6 months long. It was on the weekends.
Okay.
Um, and I learned that everything has a cost associated with it. And I think that's right now why now I am taking about 6 months off of work to get back into the workforce.
Okay.
Um, because I didn't give myself grace, and now that's what I'm working on. So it's like I have this license, I have all the skills with it, and it's like, and now I just don't want to. Any little thing is irritating me just because I didn't give myself that time to actually process this is what it is and do my
Mhm.
research and due diligence to see what job what I would like to do.
Okay. Well, we're
So
glad
it's a
you have
learning
that,
experience
that you're
even
giving
outside of the
yourself
field.
that grace and space to do it, right? To think
Yes, ma'am.
about it. If you could, Montez, you have a couple of great perspectives for us. First of all, our grant has really been focused on youth and young adult in Baltimore City. Could you tell us from your experience during the very beginning of the pandemic until now, what was kind of the sentiment for some of the young adults that you encountered or in your circle, even with outside of your circle, in reference to the COVID-19 vaccine?
Yikes. I would like to say all positive attributes, but I saw a little bit of rebellion
Hmm.
in Baltimore City. I may have been a part of some of it. It was like we had like my friends and I, we had like this detachment or like what is it? We didn't understand really what was going on. We didn't understand the magnitude. And unfortunately it's one of many topics where if it doesn't apply, you tend to not really see that this is impactful and it's impacting others. And I hate that we were so naive and insensitive and um but it was a lot of I don't know how to describe it. I do feel as if it brought a lot of people together. We were able to pretty much overcome the midst of not knowing what was going on, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, this is meeting you where you are, as Miss Jane has named the show. So we just want those kind of honest takes, on what was happening. And so, if you could, can you tell us any more information about now as it's progressed, right? What kind of changes did you see maybe in the workforce?
I'm so glad you said that. I've noticed a lot of a lot of entrepreneurship, and even with the young Black community, I noticed that we were crafty. I think COVID made us stop and it halted us, and people were able to tap into their creativity. Um, my entire Instagram and social media feeds would be people selling dinners. They sold some kind of product that they had, or they worked from home and they were able to provide another skill. Hey, I watch your kids while you do this, and I've never seen that before. A lot of people were into like clothes and boutique or like self-care and how to do your hair or showing you routines like, hey, just because you're home, still be disciplined, make your bed at 6:01 every day. And then like
Yeah.
it was so crazy, but these were things that we needed to get through. Well, I don't know if anybody else did, but I needed that, and I didn't know it was so much talent here in Baltimore.
I'd love to hear that, Jan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Montez, when, of course, there was so much death as it related to the COVID-19 virus. In Maryland alone, we lost over a million people. And so, one of the things that many people got excited about, not all, was that we finally were able to get a vaccination. We were told that that was going to help with the death rate. We always were told that it didn't mean you couldn't get the COVID virus, but it would help you to maybe not be as sick, maybe not be hospitalized and on a ventilator. And as a, I don't, I mean, even if you, unless you feel comfortable telling us your age. At your age, did you feel at all any hesitation about getting the vaccination?
Not at all. And I'm actually boosted. Some, what is it? It was for my family to make sure I'm safe to be around them, to make sure they feel safe to be around me. Because there was a period of time where they they exiled me. They would not participate. I don't know if they're on this live, but they will vouch and agree. They thought that was wild. It was senseless. It was reckless. Anything that it was that it had any negative connotation associated with it, that was me, according to the family. Um, and so if that's what I needed to do to make sure I could be around my family, then absolutely. And another thing is I actually did my research. I look at the demographic of people who were vaccinated, and you hear the stigma like, well, the things that like the government's pushing this agenda, yada yada. They don't care. Like, look at what happens with Henrietta Lacks and dating back to that. And when I looked at the demographic, it was the working class. And I'm like, well, if we know anything about the government, they are not going to kill off the working class because they need us to pay taxes. So I wasn't opposed to it.
Okay.
All right. I'm glad that you studied and you did research on your own. Because what our data did find, there was one study that said that out of a million tweets, 90% contain misinformation. And so people needed to go to other sources. And so then I'm glad you were able to do that. And also, Ms. Jan had a great interview with Dr. Sherita Hill Golden in the last podcast. And she talked about specifically the lens on Baltimore and how talking to people about the Henrietta Lacks experiment, even Tuskegee experiment, even though they had withheld treatment, not given treatment, that those were sources of mistrust. Dr. Kearney also shared that today as well. We just want to put a note in. There were 1 million cases that were diagnosed. We did not see 1 million deaths, but we did see 1 million cases in the state of Maryland. And it looks like it was very high. The percentage, especially in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County. And so we thank you. Jen, did you have anything else to ask Martez? I laughed at the exile because that's also what happened when people got savvy, right? Martez, they said, well, you're out and about and, you're not protected. So,
Agreed.
yep, we want people to be safe.
And
So,
what is it? I know they still cared about me. They would send me a care package. I would get KN95 masks. I would get all kind of research, all kind of stuff. Ginger, ashwagandha. So they did care. They just I couldn't be
They were
around
just
them.
like, don't come around us. Don't come around us. Right.
They said we're gonna love you from afar, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, but no, thank you so
Martez.
much. Thank you for having me.
No, thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
We appreciate your honesty and your transparency also.
Yeah.
Absolutely, always. Bye. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Bye-bye.
That was great, and especially to hear Montel's articulate how social media was positive, how it was an encouragement, and how he jump started a business. And we know he's going to pull that whole MBA and CDL together and come up with some amazing outcomes. So I wait to see it.
He really is. He's an amazing young man, and I'm so glad that he was able to share with us, especially because from that perspective that he is very close to his family. His grandmother, his mother, his aunt, other members of his family. They're a very tight-knit family. They're a family that's always together. You see them at events. You'll see all of them at events.
That's
And so for
beautiful.
him, I'm sure to not be around them was painful. And them around him. And for them to continue to kind of just push truthful and factual information so that he could make an informed decision, I think was a great way to not really twist his arm, but let him know that we don't want to be sick, and we are not going to take any chances with anyone who is not vaccinated.
Yes, I think we were all pretty cautious because we didn't know what was going on.
Right.
All the news was unfolding, and so I thank you because you went by and saw your aunt and uncle and waved at them from the porch and dropped off flowers and cards. And until they got sick last year, we hadn't been around them, and unfortunately, we missed some signs about how there was a health decline. going on just because we were not, present in that way. So
Right.
I guess our next guest is also an awesome young man, a Morehouse graduate. He has a master's degree, and he's also closing in on finishing up that doctorate degree. Reverend James Harris is a bright light. He is youth and young adult pastor, not only at 19th Street Baptist Church, but he also mentors and supports so many people in the community. And so he's had a widespread throughout the DMV. He hails from Atlanta, Georgia, and he brings that Southern spice and flair along with all that he does. Extremely compassionate person, and he has leaned in and has done a lot of counseling and support to people during this time. He's heard the tough stories. He's helped to help people navigate through the trauma, and so we're glad that he could be a part of the show today.
Welcome, Reverend Harris.
Hello.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us on Meeting You Where You Are.
I'm so excited to be here. I just have to give a shout out to Owen and Hunter. It's like, oh my God, they're like growing up. It was so cool to just hear them articulate all of the things that they experience. And I know you all are so proud as parents to see them, growing up and becoming wonderful young men.
Yes.
I was very excited to see that.
Thank you.
Yes.
So with your perspective, Reverend Harris, we could probably keep you on here forever, but we won't. We'll be mindful of the time. I guess what jumps out at you so much in reference to the impact of COVID-19 on our youth and young adults?
So I would say one of the biggest impacts I would think, or I would speak to at this moment, would be the dynamics with the families. You went from mom and dad, or single mom, single dad, and the kids being away the majority of the time and not being at home as much. And so a lot of the relationships and dynamics of those relationships with kids that were still in the home was very hard. I even think of a story with one of my young adults who graduated high school and had to experience his entire freshman year at home.
Yes.
And that was a huge struggle, but it showed the resilience that our youth and young adults have across the country. There were some things that they were faced with, and even in the midst of COVID, then we had some things going on with racial tension in the country. So there was a whole nother dynamic that we had to deal with. If you could, in the news, it talked about a lot of suicide. A lot of young people were really dealing with suicidal thoughts. A lot of young people were really struggling with knowing who their parents were. It was like, I've been in the house with this person for 16, 17 years, and I didn't even realize my mom liked this color, or this was my mom's favorite food, or, those type of things. And dad, who's always out of the house, working late, he's coming in, and it's like, oh, you're my pop. So let's like really take some time, get to know each other. And so although there were some strains, it was really great to see and help young people navigate through reconnecting with their families. Of course, it was a struggle, but the reconnection was such a blessing for so many people within the DMV area and across the country.
Thanks for speaking to that reconnection and also getting to know the children. We know that our data has shown in our research that anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts increased during that time. And we know that you in your role as counselor, life coach, and in a pastoral capacity also had to reach out and support young people in that way. And so, Reverend Harris, if you could just give us a note on, tell us something more about the youngest ones and some of the things that they encountered as well.
So, the young babies are the ones that really enjoy FaceTiming, being on the phone with their friends, all of that. And it got to a point, especially with being in school and having to Zoom every single day, they were sick of FaceTiming each other. It was like, what is going on? I'm on the computer all day long. or the teachers began to struggle, or we began to struggle with the idea of the students not wanting to turn on their cameras to, talk with us. But the truth of the matter is, you have to look at it at a broader dynamic. So if you're dealing with individuals that come from households where there's a two-parent income versus another child that's in the same classroom that might be living in a more impoverished experience, how can you fault them or have an attitude with them for not wanting to turn on their cameras? And so you have to be more sensitive to those type of things that was going on. Another thing that I found out is that a lot of children that were being bullied loved the idea of staying at home and being able to go to school via Zoom. And a lot of parents now are not even allowing those children to go back to school because they see that their children, they don't have that much anxiety. It's not a fight to get up in the morning to go to school. It's I get up, I get on my computer, and I'm having an experience that is far much better than before COVID. And so where there were the situations with anxiety and pressure and frustration, trying to figure out the best shoes to wear. I got to have my Jordans, I got to have the name brands, the labels, all of those things. They're not even confined to that anymore. And it's not anything they're really worrying about. So for those group or that dynamic of demographic of individuals, their grades started to go up because they were in a much better space. And just being able to talk to them and see how they opened up and flourished, it was awesome. It was it was a great thing to see.
Well, we thank you so much. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think like Hunter and Owen were sharing about just the transition from in-person to virtual. We also at BTST Cares had opportunities with some young people to have a virtual coding program, virtual program that we called Art That Empowers. And we were constantly asking them to keep their cameras on. And, a couple of them even shared with us that maybe their camera wasn't on because they didn't want us to see the background.
Absolutely.
Maybe they had people in the home that didn't necessarily they weren't as sensitive to the fact that I have my mic on, they can hear you.
Right. Yeah, and you had some parents
so we were so like focused on keep your camera on.
Right.
If your camera's not on, you're not paying attention.
Right.
But that wasn't always the case.
Yeah, you had some parents that were dressed inappropriately, that were past the camera. And then you had to think about it. There were some kids also who did not have the internet at home. So they had to go to fast food restaurants like McDonald's and Wendy's and use their free Wi-Fi, to get their work done. And so for them, that was embarrassing. And so, it also shows us, for those individuals that are in other situations that are not as impoverished, how blessed we are.
Yes.
And it also caused a lot of kids to be givers. I remember a conversation with one of the youth that I counseled, and he wanted to start taking his allowance every week and sharing it with one of his classmates, which was one of his best friends, that he found out was really struggling financially, and they didn't have Wi-Fi in the house. So his allowance every month has gone to paying for the internet bill in his best friend's home. So that just goes to show how it brought them together as well.
Wow.
It really was in some ways, we said the pandemic was the best of times and the worst of times.
Absolutely.
Right. And the way that it impacted people, and you could still have that dichotomy of it was a good time because of this, but a bad time because of that. And you're right, Reverend Harris, and I always talk to our young people to say you are blessed, that you have a great environment, right? That you have an opportunity to still learn, and you don't have those same other challenges that they may have encountered.
Absolutely.
Like I said, Reverend Harris, we could keep you here all day.
No, I could keep going. Thank you all for having me.
No, thank you. I just want to say before you leave, Reverend Harris, that and if you would touch on this real quickly before you leave, we had a great interview, as Lorice said, with Dr. Sherita Golden, and one of her positions at Johns Hopkins is Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion. And one of the things we talked about is how COVID kind of pulled the sheet off of, or the blanket off of a myriad of inequity issues around lack of diversity. And so these issues around people having pre-existing conditions, and the body of brown and black persons who had, health disparities, and social determinants of health that weren't being addressed. This wasn't new. And but it became illuminated during this time. And it wasn't just about the health, the physical health of people, but also the fact that there were disparities in things like technology in a person's home, or even the actual hardware, the laptop or the tablet that our children, Hunter and Owen, take for granted, that was just not something that was easily accessible to many children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, very true. But we're thankful that through it all, we've had individuals like your sons that see how blessed they are, but also give back to others and help, move them forward.
Yes.
So
Thank you so much, Reverend Harris. We appreciate you. And I'm so glad that Lorice invited you this evening.
It was my pleasure. You all have a wonderful evening.
We thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, I have a treat for Lorice, because I don't think she knows that um, her beloved first godson is going to come on the stage
Oh
next.
my goodness.
So
I'm smiling.
again, I told you these mommies and these sons, and just have to reach out and ask. And so my oldest son, firstborn, Omar Mabin, and his girlfriend, Candace Tranks, and my trusty right hand assistant, Dominique Vargas. So I have a lot of young adults around me.
I love it.
I am so happy that three of the young adults that I really admire and love are going to join us this evening, Mrs. Wolf, and share with us, as young adults who are in the workspace, kind of share with us that transition from being in person to virtual, to now maybe transitioning back to in person. And then Dominica also, it has a unique perspective because she's a mom. She's a mom of a little girl, and what that felt like to be in a space where you now have to not only have a child during this global pandemic, but you maybe even have to have your child in a daycare setting with other children. So before we start, going to ask Omar and Candace to introduce themselves, and then share with us what it felt like when you first realized that there were going to be lockdowns and it was going to change your work environment. I don't know. We have a little background. Is that you all?
Yep. Do you just name and
Yeah. Just say your name. Just say your name.
Right.
And,
My name's Omar Maven. I'm a dispatch and I'm a emergency and economic dispatcher for Sea Power Energy Management.
And hi, my name's Candace Trangs. I'm an electrical engineer. I work for the Navy.
And they're both Morgan State University graduates.
Yes.
Yep.
Go Bears.
Woo.
HBCU for life.
Yep.
So Omar, tell us when you were, because you have an interesting schedule. You work 12-hour shifts. And you're in a position where you have to be, on high alert all the time.
Yeah.
And then you moved into an environment where you could not work from home.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think about people that, have office jobs, and they have jobs where they're on a computer, and of course they can work from home, but that's not your story. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I feel like as atypical as the whole COVID work experience was, mine was a little bit more atypical because I was a very essential employee throughout the whole COVID stretch. The power grid never stops running. So our typical work environment was 12-hour shifts so we could operate 24/7, 365. And when COVID started, there was some talk of being able to send the dispatchers home so they could work. But one of our biggest clients, ERCOT, has this hard rule that they need a direct line to everyone that dispatches for them. So since they couldn't hardwire to everybody's houses, the dispatchers ended up being the only essential employees throughout COVID. So we would go in the office and sit there for 12 hours with no one else coming in the whole time. So that was super interesting. They gave us the notes and the essential employee cards for if we got pulled over when they started doing the curfews and everything. It was a long experience, but it was it was it was good to experience. I feel like just because it was necessary work, like it had to be done by somebody. But,
Okay.
So for me, my COVID experience and work experience were also pretty interesting. So I ended up graduating from Morgan State May 2020, and that happened to be 2 months after everything started shutting down. So my onboarding experience was almost non-existent. I went into the office maybe for about a week, maybe 2 weeks. And when I went there, nobody was really there. It was really me just meeting my supervisor and turning in all my, starting documents. But it felt very isolating at first. And then having to sort of transition from the college world to the adult world was also very upsetting, because I didn't have a chance to really meet with all my coworkers and get to know them personally. Everything was done through a screen. So there was a lot of disconnect with my fellow coworkers. And honestly, for a really long time, I didn't feel like I was in the working world. So.
Okay. All right. So I know Candace mentioned this, that she graduated, I'm using air quotes, in May 2020, but she did not get to experience a graduation ceremony because most schools were not having in-person graduations.
Right.
And so, Candace, tell us a little bit about that, and how, someone who had worked really hard. I mean, did you hear her say she was an electrical engineering major? And I believe she had a 4.0 GPA. You talking about somebody that's brilliant, that's worked really hard in university, and then you get to the end and, oh my God, it's like somebody put a pin in your balloon. You can't even walk off the stage. That's gotta.
Yep, that's exactly how I felt. Again, it was just a lot of disconnect around that time when it came to like interpersonal connections. And I was so excited to finally, show my parents and my family what I accomplished by crossing that stage. And it didn't happen for me. We ended up having the opportunity to cross the following year, in May 2021. But at that point, I'd already been working. My grandparents, they live in Guyana, and they weren't able to travel at the time to see me cross. And I was only able to have my mom and my dad come. I couldn't even have my little brother come see me or Omar come see me. So it just kind of felt like a placeholder. It didn't really feel like anything to me, which kind of sucks. And a lot of the plans that I had for traveling were also put off to the side during that time, and I still have yet to do much traveling that I want to do. So
Yeah. Okay.
Candace,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing like so openly, you and Omar, about kind of like the real feelings behind it, right? Because you all both observed it in some, really poignant ways. And we're so proud of you of how you persevered. And one term that comes out is that you've built resilience. And so because it's been so tough now, there's some other things that won't be as tough, the next time. But we talked about that. And so we're glad that you all kind of jumped in. I think one thing indicator for the workplace is about organizational culture, right? And so Omar, you being by yourself, for that extended period of time and not having that interaction. And then Candace, you missing that kind of, milestone about being welcomed in and getting to learn a company and getting to see it through other folks' eyes. That's also different too. So I'm just so glad that you really talked openly about that experience, because I know that when folks do view this, that they're going to, be able to learn some things from it, and probably be mindful about, like you said, Candace, you can't go back and change things, but how can we adapt more, right? In the future, I think we had another nephew and he graduated on like a football field with folks kind of spaced out, but at least they had the opportunity, to be able to do that. And then he was in your class as well. And your other cousin decided he was over it. And Nigel did not go back and participate in commencement when they offered it to him, I think this past year, because he just said, I'm kind of finished. They saw his picture flash on the screen, and kind of that was it. But thanks, guys. So I hope you can get back to traveling and moving safely in the future. I think in your friend circle, because we love the perspective of our 20 somethings. What did you all kind of hear about vaccine hesitancy and any reluctance as it related to that in your circle in Baltimore?
I feel like we got a lot of our social interactions recently have been with our friends from the DMV Anime Club, and all of their official events you have to be vaccinated for. So it's we've been really surrounded by a lot of people in our age range who are vaccinated, but as far as like vaccine hesitancy, like there are like one or two people who we know is like, yeah, I just haven't gotten it yet, or like I'm not comfortable, or I never get the flu vaccine. So you hear all types of excuses people make, but it's for me the biggest thing about getting the vaccine has always been, even if you think that you're not vulnerable, there are people in your life that you care about who are vulnerable. They're like older people or people who you know that your relative has asthma, has trouble breathing, and you're gonna not be vaccinated and try to be around them. That's like selfish to me.
And that sort of aspect is why getting the vaccine and getting the booster was really important for me, because my father is immunocompromised. He has a lot of respiratory issues. And my parents were very direct in saying that when Maryland shut down, they were shut down. So at that time, I had also moved out of my family's home. So I wasn't able to see my parents for almost over a year. I saw them through the phone. If I went by the house to pick up mail, I could only speak to my mom through the window, sometimes see my little brother through the window. My dad was kind of trapped in the basement. He wasn't even able to really be around my mom and brother. So that was really hard for me. But it helped being around people who were vaccinated and also playing it safe, because neither Omar or I have gotten COVID. So when things started opening up more, we were able to visit my parents.
Mm-hmm. Thank you
Well,
for sharing that,
praise
Candy.
God. Thank you. That's very bold of you, strong of you to share that. I
Mhm.
didn't even know that you had not seen your parents for over a year. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Just one last question. I was wondering because I know that you all are connected to social media and other kinds of um, media through the fact that you all are gamers and you're anime lovers. Just wondering, did you see any of the misinformation? As Lorice said, with the what is it, 1 million tweets, 90% of them were
Negative.
negative.
Yeah.
And so just wondering if you saw any of that, and how you think people perceive that.
Um, I personally feel like I saw the most information, the most misinformation on Facebook, and
Mm.
Really?
it was it was crazy. It feels like, well, it was in response to when Facebook started doing the have you read this article before sharing?
Right.
This article contains information about COVID. Are you sure you want to share
Right.
it? So it was like, that was the big misinformation spot for me. I don't think I was really like on Twitter that much
Mhm.
during the height of COVID.
I was on Twitter and crazy. It was crazy the amount of misinformation that was going around, especially when it came to celebrities and celebrities' responses to COVID and their families. People would say, "My brother lost his left arm because of COVID," or
Like
just
Nicki
something,
Minaj.
just crazy out of the world statements like that were made.
Yeah, Nicki Minaj had a wild statement during COVID. I don't even remember what it was. It was like her cousin had
Her cousin
gotten
from
it.
the islands had gotten sick.
It was wild. It's like, that's not even one of the possible symptoms. It was ridiculous.
Right. I think one of them, they noted said the vaccine contains a microchip, so they were using
Oh
it to
yeah.
track you. That you were going to become magnetic after taking, the vaccine, and so then, that it would affect your, body and your long term health outcomes,
Mhm.
and some other things. So it's good to know. We should have known, Jan, that Facebook was right in it, because we know
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
algorithms are at work. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I thank you so
Well,
much.
we yeah, I was gonna say we consider you our COVID ambassadors,
Yes.
um, and when we need someone to give a boost to your generation, we're definitely gonna reach back out to you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing this time with us this evening.
No problem. Thanks for having
Um,
me.
Thank you,
You see my cheeks hurt still.
Mom.
Just, thank you guys so much, though.
No problem.
okay, all right. I think Dominique gave way to them so that we wouldn't be
Yes,
so
she did.
crowded on the screen. But
Yes.
she's back now. Hey, Dominique.
Hey, Dominique.
Miss Reese.
Yes. So, Dominique is the program associate at BTST Cares, and she is an amazing mom. And I'm gonna let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her daughter, Shy. And then I'm going to ask her because Dominique also was a contact tracer during the height of COVID. So
Yes.
maybe share with us some of that experience too, Dominique.
Okay.
And then tell us about, just some of the things that you felt. I know when you started this position and you were looking for daycare, it had to be top of mind that you wanted your daughter to be in a safe environment, even because we were still experiencing new cases of COVID.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dominique Vargas. As Ms. Jan stated, I am the program associate at BTSD Cares. I'll jump right into it. I have a daughter that's 2 years old. Her name is Shy. We
Mhm.
moved here from New York last February. And I moved here partly because I wanted to change and also because we lived in New York during the height of COVID. Like, I feel like at the time that I've lived there my whole life. I'm from New York, but during that time, my anxiety heightened because I realized that COVID wasn't ending there, and the numbers were steadily increasing, and it made me very anxious because I'm like, I don't think this is a place where we are going to be able to live freely again. It was very hard for me to raise my daughter there. She was born the December before COVID started. So, um, I, like everybody else, when COVID started, I thought it was just going to be a 2-week thing. And then it ended up being a couple month thing. And then more months happened. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to have to figure this thing out. Like, I'm not able to go outside how I want to. My daughter can't enjoy basic things. I couldn't take her to the park like I wanted to because at the time, outside was really the only thing to do. So I decided to make the transition to Maryland. Her father's family is from here, so I felt like that was the best thing for us to do. And also, I had an uncle who had served 30 years in prison, and he came out, and 2 months later he died from COVID, and that like struck me. Like it struck me like a ton of bricks because I was just like, he's been inside for 30 years, and he hasn't experienced life yet. And as soon as he comes home, he's been stricken with COVID and he passed away from it. So I really just wanted a change of scenery. So I moved here and I noticed that, the numbers were a little lower. People were a little bit freer when it came to COVID. We still stayed inside most of the time, but I was able to take precautions like I wanted to and not feel forced like I was in New York. I started at BTST Cares, and it was essential for me to put Shy in daycare. And I already had anxiety because of COVID, but putting Shy in daycare, looking for a daycare that took extra precaution for with children and COVID, that was like my number one thing. Like, I know it sounds silly, but I wasn't even worried about curriculum when I was looking for a daycare. I was looking for like, okay, how do you sanitize toys? How do they eat? How do they play together? Are you washing hands frequently? Is there sanitizer? Like, I was like on a strenuous search to find a daycare that was like adamant about keeping, common areas clean. And with children, I know that's very hard. Like, I know it's like almost impossible. So the daycare I found, so I looked everywhere. Like, Miss Reese and Miss Jan, I was looking like Bowie, Lanham, and I live in the Fort Washington area. So I was looking everywhere, but I ended up finding a daycare that's literally 5 minutes from my house that like felt the safest to me. And they take extra precaution when it comes to cleaning for COVID. However, on Christmas Day, Shy did catch COVID. She caught COVID from one of her classmates whose parents, they noticed that she was having symptoms, and instead of keeping her home, they still sent her to school. And that's how Shy ended up catching COVID. And that sent me
As
into
you
like,
said, she wasn't old enough. She's not old enough to be vaccinated.
nope, she's 2 years old. So that like my fear, my anxiety was like through the roof. However, at the time I was still breastfeeding, and they say that you pass the antibodies to your child when you're breastfeeding. So I have a friend and her mom's in the medical field, and she's a pediatric doctor. So she reassured me, Shy's doctor reassured me that she was going to be okay, and she was okay. I think that it's so amazing like how resilient children are when they're sick. Like it was amazing to me that she was sick, but she didn't like feel any like she wasn't showing any signs of discomfort when she had COVID, and that was like amazing to me. But that's usually how it is with children her age and around her age. And like because of that, I'm always anxious for her to, like, every day I pray over her. I put holy oil on her forehead every day because I'm anxious and I'm nervous for her to encounter that again, and I don't want her to. As far as me going into the workplace, I feel like COVID has spoiled us. Working from home has spoiled us in a big way because working from home, like, it's crazy because remote jobs existed before COVID, and like I don't think a lot of us realized that, but they did. And so I guess I didn't realize that. I didn't realize like you can work from home 5 days a week or 7 days a week if you want to. But it after a while it gave me, I was working from home doing contact tracing, and thankfully I was able to talk to people every day, which it made the days go by easier because I was able to talk to. I was doing I was a contact tracer and a case investigator. So a contact tracer is someone that calls people who may have been in contact with someone who has COVID, and a case investigator is someone who contacts the person that has COVID. And then they contact the people who may have been in contact with that person. So I was both. And so I was doing about like 20 to 30 people a day. So I had a wide variety of people I spoke to. And the cases that always got me were like the newborn babies that had just come home from the hospital, and the smaller children like in daycare, ages like 2, 3, 4, 5, like that always, it didn't shock me, but it made me feel sad, that they have to experience those symptoms. But back to me working from home, it was.
Dominic, let me ask you this though. Because you were working from home, did you delay getting the vaccine when it was available to you? Kind of thinking like, well, I work from home anyway. I don't really need to be as anxious to get the vaccine. Did you have any hesitancy based on just the fact that you were talking to people all day long that had tested positive?
To be honest, Jan, no, like no. I was my friends kind of called me the guinea pig. Like I was like the black sheep for a little while when it came to getting the vaccine. Because like I had a daughter to protect. My mom, I live with my mother. She had high blood pressure, but and she got the vaccine, but I was protecting my daughter. And my friend, it was new. I got it when it was like when it just came out, and it was at first it was available to, I think it was 60 or 65 and older. But when it was like available to everyone, I was like the first to like sign me up because I knew I had a daughter to protect. So my friends found out that I got vaccinated. They put me in a group message and they were like, I know you did not do that. Like, I know you did not do that. I know you did not like basically sell your soul to get that vaccination. And I'm like, they were like, it came out too fast. There's not enough research. And I had done research myself, just like Montez had mentioned, like it came out so fast because they had a lot of money to do it. And when there's a lot of money to do it, there's more people that are able to do research on COVID, and people don't realize COVID has been out before. Like, and that's what I was trying to explain to my friends. Like, this is not new. These variants are new, but COVID is not a new thing. So research has already been done. So like I was saying, I was very like adamant about getting vaccinated. And even though I didn't leave the house at all, when I first moved to Maryland, I didn't have a car at all. So I really wasn't leaving the house, but I just knew that I had to protect myself and my daughter. And I went from living in a house, a single family home, to living in an apartment with hundreds of people. So I knew it was like essential for me to protect myself and my daughter.
Again, I applaud you on the research, Dominic, and standing up and being an example and model for your friends. But as you said, it was enhanced because number one of your daughter and then your mother. So I applaud you for that. And you were right that SARS-CoV vaccine research has been going on since 2015. And
Yes.
so this variant, that's why they were able to respond to it so quickly, because
Right.
they already had that data to support how to approach it. And then they had the breakthrough along with Dr. Kismakia Corbett, who we know is an African American
Mhm.
researcher and colleague of Dr. Sherita Hill Golden.
Right.
And that. And so, as a contact tracer fellow one, I know you had an enhanced role, but you're right. It was poignant when I would talk to people who were in the hospital, or there was a woman that I had to call 911.
Yeah.
Or there was someone I stayed on the phone until a friend came over because I was so worried because she was having trouble breathing, or someone I called and they said they unfortunately had passed away. So COVID 19 and all of the iterations were very, very impactful to me, as you know, I walked through that in that role.
Yeah.
So I thank you for being so open, and I thank, of course, our fearless leader, Jan Desper Peters, Executive Director of BTST Cares, for all that she does to bring timely, important messaging to the public. We've had such an incredible panel, and we thank you all for all of your insight this evening. Jan.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I was just looking for the link, and I'm sure that your friends and family have been sending the link. That's what I'm calling it, where you can get the free COVID test from the United States Postal Service. And
Yeah.
so I'm sure that you would be able to find that even if you Googled it. And I think that it's good for us to have those at our disposal in our homes. Of course, and I'm sure Larice and can tell you a little bit more about this because she has been so immersed in this topic. If you do test positive, then you maybe should, go and get the PCR test or some other kind of test other than the home test. But if you have any symptoms or believe that you have symptoms, at least you have something readily available at home to help you with that. And those tests are free. Oh, I just love it. I just love my team. They have it right on the screen there.
These producers are something else.
Visit covidtest.gov to order your
Mm.
free COVID tests. And I know that at first they were giving out 4, and then I was surprised that the link started coming around again, and you could get 4 more. And this most recent link, if you've gotten those first 2 sets of 4, now they'll give you 8.
Okay.
So
Good to
President
know.
Biden and his team, they're very serious about us having access to that test. And so please get your free test that you can have at home. I want to thank Larice White Wolf, who I love dearly. Full
Ditto.
transparency, is my sister. You can't tell us we're not sisters. Sisters from different mothers, but still sisters all the same. You hear us
Yeah.
referencing each other's children as our godchildren because that's who they are. And so
Yeah.
when we were trying to pull this together, I was saying, why should we go outside of the circle? Just ask our young adults to be in on these conversations. We had great conversation with Reverend Harris,
Yes.
who is at Larice's home church, 19th Street Baptist Church.
Yeah.
And this great team that's working behind the scenes. We actually pulled Dominique Farkas from behind the scene, but we also have Gloria Collier, who really
Yeah.
is serving as the program manager for this
Yes, she is.
Baltimore city versus COVID-19 grant program that we have with working with the University of Maryland School of Social Work. So thank you, Gloria.
Thank you,
Thank
Gloria. Thank you,
Thank you
Dominic.
so much for your leadership in this regard.
Yes.
Thank you, Dominique. Thank you, Owen Wilson. Thank you, Hunter Wolf. Thank you, Omar Maben and Candace Tranks. And, and last but not least, Reverend James Harris.
Montez Garrett.
And
Yes.
Montez Garnett. I was
Yes.
like, oh my God, I forgot my Montez.
Yes.
So Montez, thank you. And thank you and you for listening. I know this was a long podcast session, but where else are you going to go to hear the perspective of some great young people inside and outside of Baltimore, which is the target area that we're working in? But I'm sure that some of those feelings and thoughts and experiences were universal.
Yes.
So until next time, this is the Meeting You Where You Are podcast. We ask you to please be safe, and we'll see you next time.